everyone, and thank you for joining another one of our featured state webinars. Well, we have a lot of great information for you all today, and I'm so glad that you could tune in for another one of these videos in the series. My name is Molly Lenahan, and I'm a Senior Relocation Coordinator here at Worldwide HealthStaff Solutions. I'm joined this morning by another one of our relocation coordinators, Samantha Lish, as well as our wonderful Director of Recruiting, Amy Kerr. We'll be going over a few of the states that maybe you haven't even considered moving to in the United States. We'll be going over Utah, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and Minnesota. Just to kick us off this morning, if you guys will tell us where in the chat where you're tuning in from, we would love to know. And if you have any questions, please feel free to throw that in the chat as well. We'll be having a question and answers here at the end of our slideshow today, just to go over any of the pressing questions that you all may have. To kick us off, I will go ahead and jump into our first slide. We're going over Pennsylvania in our first slide. Wonderful state, close to North Carolina, where we are located here at Worldwide. Pennsylvania is on the East Coast of the United States. They do call this the Liberty Bell State. We have some pictures here in our next slide that I can show you over that. Pennsylvania has very decent weather, in July, which is about the hottest month in the United States. You're going to get about 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius, so a very average summer. Temperatures in January, one of the colder months here in the United States, can be about 28 degrees Fahrenheit or -2 degrees Celsius. So you're going to get a little bit of a colder winter, but I would still say that's pretty average here across the board here in the United States. So having some very good weather there. Some of the major cities that we have in Pennsylvania include Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Allentown, all great places. Just to jump over into our next slide here, I have some awesome images to show you guys, just highlighting some of the great attractions they have here in Pennsylvania. Some of those destinations that you see here on the side would include Independence National Park, which has that Liberty Bell, like we discussed in that last slide. You can see that there in the bottom left image. Also, Hershey's Park, that is an amusement park there in Pennsylvania. They're known as the chocolate state of the United States. So they do have Hershey's Park there. If you're going there, I highly recommend trying out the chocolate. We also have Presque Isle State Park, which you see there on the top left corner. A beautiful little park there on the coast. Stunning views, and if you like the water, I think you'll have a really great time there. Some of the popular foods, which I know I would be interested in having, would include Philly cheesesteaks. Now, you can find those almost anywhere in the United States, but coming directly from the state that it was born in, absolutely out of this world. We also have shoe fly pie, which, if I'm being honest, I've never tried before, but it looks absolutely delicious. And Hers chips, that's actually a staple there in Pennsylvania. It was made and created there. And I love a good snack, so I think that if you guys are heading over there, definitely worth trying it out. The climate in Pennsylvania is generally humid, humid continental, so about average, you're there on the coastal state. And I think you'd really enjoy it, especially if you're coming from a humid climate to begin with. Sammy, do you have anything to add about Pennsylvania?
Nothing specific, just that shoe fly pie looks very interesting. I've never even heard of that, but it looks really delicious, and I'll have to try that sometime.
Absolutely. We'll take a trip up there. I will go ahead and pass off our next slide to Sammy. She's going to go over Utah.
Okay, great. So Utah is another one of our great states that we're talking about today. This is Utah's flag up here in the upper left-hand corner. I think it's a really interesting flag. Utah is a western state, and it's one of the Rocky Mountain states. So there's a lot of beautiful mountain views here in Utah. It's a little warmer in the summer. So in July, it averages about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 32 degrees Celsius. In January, it gets a little colder. It does typically snow in this state in the winter, and the average is about 25 degrees Fahrenheit, which is -4 degrees Celsius. Some of the major cities here in Utah are Salt Lake City, West Valley City, and the city of Provo. it's a fairly industrial state, but there are definitely some suburban areas as well. And then we've got some great photos here to kind of just demonstrate the beauty of Utah. Some of the destinations are Zion National Park, which is a gorgeous national park with a lot of red rock and just beautiful sights. Canyonlands National Park as well as Arches National Park, which some really cool natural arch formations out of rock, which I think is really interesting. I've never been there, but from the pictures, it looks really beautiful. And some of the popular food in this state is fry sauce, which is just like a dipping sauce, pastrami burgers, and funeral potatoes, which sounds a little silly, but it's just comfort food. It's just a cheesy potato hot dish, and it's really delicious. And the climate here in Utah is a desert climate, so it's pretty dry. It's not very humid here, but it does still get pretty cold in the winter.
That's awesome. I love a good comfort food. So I think I would be all over funeral potatoes if I'm ever visiting Utah. I have to go and find somewhere for those.
Definitely.
And I just wanted to add in as well, and I apologize to our lovely viewers today. I also wanted to just mention some of our amazing employers that we are hiring for in some of these states. Just to jump back to Pennsylvania, we do have Lehigh Valley Health as well as Algae Health. So we are actively hiring for those in those states, which is fantastic. Highly recommend looking into it and talking with our recruiters. They're more than happy to help. And then here in Utah, we have a wonderful employer called Intermountain Health. So if you're interested, make sure you're talking out to our recruiters. Sammy, looking at these awesome pictures of Utah, I've heard that Utah has some of the craziest terrain. They have all kinds of different terrain. They have these like wonderful canyons, but also beautiful big trees, and they have like places for water if you still enjoy the water, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a state filled with lots of different terrains. Like you were saying, there's canyons, there's mountains, there's plains. It's all just a really beautiful area with lots of different variety when it comes to kind of nature, which I think is great.
That's awesome. Well, if you like the outdoors and you're into exploring, I definitely think this might be a good spot for you. I'll go ahead and kick off our next state, which is Indiana. Really great state here. They actually call it the Crossroads of America because it is such a central state. It has a great highway system to be able to get to a lot of different places. So if you're really into traveling, I think Indiana would be a fantastic state. It is a Midwestern state. It is also a very average temperature, again, I would say overall, comparatively to the United States. So in July, again, one of our hottest months, we're seeing about 83 degrees Fahrenheit, 28 degrees Celsius as your average. And then in January, again, being one of the colder months, we have about 36 degrees Fahrenheit to about 2 degrees Celsius. So I think that those are great temperatures, especially for those extreme months where you're going to be getting the most extreme weather, right? During our other months, we're going to be a little bit more mild. So that's awesome there. Some of our major cities include Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, as well as Evansville. I hear that these are really great cities for starting up families, very safe cities, very great cost of living here in Indiana. So I think that's a really important part to mention. Well, an important thing for our candidates to be thinking about while they're planning their future lives in the United States. What things are really important to you, and what research do you need to take a look at before accepting a job offer somewhere. Let's get to the fun part where we get to look at all these really cool pictures and some of these really awesome destinations. Some of the most popular destinations we have here are the Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial, which is, of course, one of the most famous United States presidents, Abraham Lincoln. And it's where he grew up. You can see that there on the bottom left corner. We also have Bloomington, which is just a beautiful little town here in Indiana. That is actually that top picture on the left-hand corner that you all see. It looks gorgeous. The fall time looks right out of a movie. Looks like it's right out of a movie. I have added that to my bucket list to visit because I think that it looks amazing there. And then you have Indiana Dunes National Park. I think a lot of times when you think of a Midwestern state, you may not be thinking of places with really great water and really great views. But that picture there in the middle is of Indiana Dunes National Park, and it looks beautiful. Again, if you like hiking and you like the water and you like exploring, I really think that this would be a great spot for you. Some of the popular food they have there in Indiana is a pork tenderloin sandwich, which you can see there on the top row of those pictures. Sugar cream pie. Looks like we're going over all the sweets today. And pork and beans, which I know is a staple there in Indiana, and across America as well. But I think it was where it was created. So I think that's really neat. Climate, again, humid continental, is very average. It's something that you'll see across the states here in the United States. Anything you wanted to add there, Sammy?
That Bloomington, that it looks beautiful. I love the fall. So that's definitely something I need to add to my bucket list as well, because it looks like one of those really cute, fun fall towns to visit. And I've never been to Indiana, so I'll have to visit sometime.
Absolutely. I definitely don't think you could go wrong. Some of our employers who are hiring here in Indiana would be Fresenius, as well as DaVita. So they're located here in Indiana and have positions open and ready to fill. If you're ever interested, again, please make sure you reach out to one of our recruiters. Go ahead and jump us on over to the next slide where we're going over Colorado. I'll pass it over to you, Sammy.
All right. Colorado is a wonderful state. It's in the West. They have this super cool flag with the C on it. I don't really know the history there, but that would definitely be something interesting to look into. It's also one of the Rocky Mountain states, so a lot of beautiful mountain ranges in this state. Temperatures in July average 84 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 29 degrees Celsius. It's pretty warm in the summers, but definitely, like Molly said previously, it gets a little milder in the in-between months. In January, it's definitely a little colder with 43 degrees Fahrenheit and 6 degrees Celsius, and gets kind of as low as 17 degrees Fahrenheit and negative 8 degrees Celsius, which is pretty chilly, but definitely some beautiful weather in Colorado. Some of the major cities are Denver, Colorado Springs, Aurora, and Boulder. I have actually just recently been to Colorado, and it was beautiful there over the summer, so I definitely think that this is a great state to be in. Some of the destinations in this state are the Royal Gorge, which I've never been there, but based on the picture there on the middle right-hand side, it looks beautiful. The Denver Museum of Nature and Science, which again is just another really cool destination, a lot of cool history there. And then the Red Rocks Park and Amphitheater, which is a really popular concert venue. So there will be a lot of cool concerts held there with a beautiful red rock background. So you'll have to check and see if any of your favorite artists will be visiting there anytime soon, if this is a state you're interested in. Some of the popular food in this state are Rocky Mountain oysters, which I've never tried but sound very interesting. Colorado-style green chili, which looks delicious, and lamb fondue, which I've also never tried. So it sounds like there's a lot of really good food that I need to try in Colorado. And the climate in this state is cool, dry, and sunny. So it's not very humid here. It's pretty dry, but in the mid-months, it's pretty cool. It's not too hot, not too cold, but in the winter it does get a little chilly. Anything you're interested in adding, Molly?
You know, I just wanted to say that the Red Rocks Park and Amphitheater, I have never been myself. I've never seen a concert there. I have actually been to it. It looks amazing there. The views are otherworldly. But the people that I have met who have been to a concert or a venue or an event there just say it was the best time of their lives. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. The sunset that you see in the evening is out of this world. So if you haven't been, or you're really big in concerts, I think that would be an awesome spot for you guys to visit. And that Royal Gorge, I can be, a little adventurous, but that looks a little scary. I don't know. I think if you guys are the adventure types and like to get out there, that might be your spot, because look at that bridge.
I know. I was just looking at that. That looks definitely a little scary for me because I'm not too big on heights. But if, like you're saying, if you guys are more adventurous, that would definitely be a really amazing place to visit.
Absolutely. I would say that if anybody does go there, Worldwide definitely wants a picture. They want to see.
Absolutely.
Here in Colorado, similar to Utah, we have Intermountain hiring here actively. So if you're interested, again, reach out to our recruiters. They'll be happy to point you in the right direction. Let me just jump us on over to Minnesota, which is another one of our Midwestern states here in the United States. It is called the Land of 10,000 Lakes, okay, which I think is really neat. If you love water, this is going to be a great state for you. If you're into fishing or getting out on the boat, or even just laying on the side with reading a nice book, I think that this would be a great spot for you. The temperatures in July are averaging about 83 degrees Fahrenheit to about 28 or 28 degrees Celsius. So not too bad for one of the hotter months here in the United States. Temperatures in January are about 25 degrees Fahrenheit or -4 degrees Celsius. So we're seeing one of those colder states there in the winter. You'll have your winter wonderland during that time of year. See the snow falling, which I think is really cool, actually. Some of those big cities here in Minnesota include Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth. So let's jump into those and kind of see some pictures and what fun stuff we have going on in Minnesota. As you can see here, some of our really popular destinations is Gooseberry Falls State Park, which is right there on the top left-hand corner. Some really amazing structures up there, which I think are out of this world, almost like an outdoor museum, I hear. We also have the Cathedral of St. Paul. The building looks absolutely marvelous. I mean, the details that go into this building are insane. I would love to just stand there and stare at that all day. And then you have the Minneapolis Structured Garden, as mentioned. Some of those popular foods include Juicy Lucy, which is that fish dish that you see there on that's the walleye fish. The Juicy Lucy is that burger that you see there in the middle row, which looks delicious. And then you have the walleye fish there in the bottom corner. And tater tot hot dish. I can't say I've ever heard of that, but when I was doing my research, it looked phenomenal. So highly recommend that. The climate here is a continental climate, so with cold winters and hot, humid summers. So you kind of get the best of all worlds there, depending on what your preferences are. I like a little bit of change up throughout the year, so I think you'll be in the right spot if you're choosing this. Anything to add here?
Nothing too crazy, but just that that sculpture garden looks really interesting. I love going to museums and things like that, so I think it would be really cool to visit somewhere that had sculptures and art like that just outside. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. There's actually a lot of museums here in Minnesota as well. I was doing my research and I couldn't narrow it down to just one. There's a lot of things to do here. So if you really like to go to museums and go exploring in that way, I think you're heading into a great spot. One of our employers that are hiring here in Minnesota is Cassia, which is a great employer that we hire through. We've had a lot of nurses come through with them. So I think that if you are interested in this spot, they might be a good fit for you. So I highly recommend talking to one of our recruiters. I'll go ahead and jump on over to our Q&A portion. That is the end of our slides today for our featured states. So we're going to jump into our question and answer portion of today's webinar, and I'll have Amy join us back to help us facilitate that.
All right, thank y'all so much for telling us about all those great states. For everybody joining us around the world, the United States is just a huge country with so many different places to live, and there's There's really great things about every single state. So we really encourage that you take time to think about all the states that you may not have thought about. And I think some of the ones mentioned today are places that folks who live in the U.S. are migrating to as well. So, so great places to think of. And I think traditionally some of the places that a lot of our international candidates are very familiar with, like New York and California, there's a lot of people that are leaving those states and going to other places because of the cost of living. So some of these places are places where they're choosing to move. So, so great. Thanks for sharing all that information with us. I don't know that I see any questions in the chat. If you have any questions, please make sure to put them in the chat. There is a question about, will we get recorded versions of this webinar? And yes, everybody who signed up will get a recording of this emailed to you. I think maybe just for our relocation team, what are some of the things that you would ask for all candidates to think about before they make the big move to the U.S.?
I think that's a great question, and a lot of things. There's a lot of things to think about when you're, considering moving to the U.S. and getting ready to move to the U.S. But really be doing your research. What is the cost of living in that state? Have you looked at apartments? Maybe they're not going to be your exact apartment that you're going to secure, but how much is rent going for? How big is your family? Some places in the United States and some cities are going to have different costs for larger bedrooms or bigger space available for you and your family, as well as schools for your children. Think about the terrain that you're coming into, the weather that you're going to experience, the changes in diversity that you're going to experience. I think there's a lot of things to think about, but with some research, I think you can find a lot of those answers out.
Awesome. There's a couple of questions about specific states, and I think the best way to know what is available is to reach out to your recruiter. Each company that's hiring, each employer has different availability based on specialty. So your recruiter will be the very, very best person to be able to tell you what is available based on your background and experience. You can also reach out and chat right now live to a recruiter. And so please make sure to do that. The link is here and also above the chat. Also, like us on Facebook. We have lots of webinars, including a webinar that registration will open up for later this week on retrogression that's coming in September. So like us on Facebook and follow all of the things that we do here at Worldwide. We also have an amazing referral program. And so if you have nurse friends or you'd like to go on this journey with a friend, please make sure to refer your friends as well. And then if you haven't applied yet and you don't have a recruiter, please feel free to go to our website at healthstaff.org to apply, and we'll be happy to get you connected directly with a recruiter who can answer all the questions about your specific background. There is a question that came through about how many years of experience do you need? I think most big hospitals require at least 2 years of current experience. We have some other hospitals that would accept a year of current experience. Our dialysis partners require a year of current dialysis experience. But to do anything in acute care or in dialysis, they all require you to be currently working in the field that you're going to interview for. Okay, so there's one question here about diversity, standards of living, and pay rate in Colorado and Pennsylvania. Let me just say about, let me sort of talk about pay rate, and then I'll toss it over to the relocation team for diversity and standards of living. But I think, so we as a direct hire company, we don't have the pay rates ahead of any interview. So every single person that's hired through Worldwide is hired as a direct hire of the company. So every rate is calculated based on your individual years of experience, the department, and the location. So we don't have the exact pay rates for any of the organizations ahead of interview. However, if you want to see the prevailing wage, you can absolutely do that, and feel free to look up the prevailing wage. That's assigned by county by the Department of Labor every year on July 1st. So what about Colorado and Pennsylvania? To the relocation folks, any information on diversity or standards of living?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great question. And that is a great thing to be thinking about when you're considering where you want to go to the United States. I think that a lot of our nurses are surprised by how diverse the United States really is. And I think that there's great ways of finding those communities or doing your research about communities ahead of your arrival. Facebook is a fantastic place to look for communities. Even just a quick Google search, churches, organizations, even volunteering options are going to get you connected with the population. And see the diversity there. We also have some great sites to be able to look at those demographics. So if you ever need that, reach out to your point of contact. That can always get you in touch with the relocation coordinator to assist you with that. So I think that with just a little bit of research, you'll be able to see kind of the diversity across those states and how diverse it really is.
Absolutely, like Molly shared, there's a lot of great options for groups that you could join. Facebook, like Molly said, is a great place to kind of look and see if there's any groups in your area that you might be able to join to kind of just make those connections. That makes, the big move a little less scary. But like Molly said, the U.S. is pretty diverse. It does surprise a lot of our nurses how diverse it is when they do arrive. So these states, I don't know specifically. I'll have to do some research, but I think a lot of them have a lot of great diversity and a pretty good standard of living as well.
Yeah, and Colorado is a state, and I think one of the things that's like everywhere, right? Everywhere that you go, there are, like, within the state, there's lots of different cities. There's big cities, there's little cities. Just like around the world, in bigger cities, they're more diverse. Smaller towns are generally less diverse. That's not always true, but generally it is. And Colorado is a place where, there are some very culturally diverse cities, and I think Pennsylvania is the same way. Somebody asked about Utah and how diverse Utah is. Some of the big cities in Utah are probably less diverse than Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. But it's like the housing market in Utah is one of the fastest growing housing markets in the U.S. because the people in Utah are so kind and the cost of living is really good. And the schools are good and it's really safe. And so there's lots of really good things about that. I think that somebody from Worldwide put in the chat a calculator for cost of living. And so that's a really, if you want to look specifically at a state or a city, I think it's really important to look city by city because that's really what drives the cost of living.
Absolutely.
A couple of questions. There's a question about retrogression. And do we still process applications even though it's retrogression? And the answer is yes. We still file I-140 applications for every RN, and that's what gets you a priority date, puts you in line. So absolutely, we are processing applications every day. Our legal team over here at Worldwide is really busy, and we do process applications all the time. And then a couple of questions about work experience. Again, for your individual experience, talking to a recruiter is exactly the right thing. But I will say currently working as a nurse is very important. So if you're not currently working as a nurse, it's going to be very difficult to get an interview in a hospital or really anywhere. We do take clinic experience, but often not for a hospital setting. But your recruiter can look specifically at your information. And then there was a question about the clients in Indiana and Minnesota. So in Minnesota, we have partners, employer partners with DaVita, Fresenius, and Cassia. which is the long-term care group that we hire for. And then Indiana is DaVita and Fresenius. Let's see. Does retrogression apply to Canada? I know everyone's super interested in retrogression. Two things. One, Ron Hoppy has done a couple of webinars about retrogression with some of our immigration attorney partners, and you can find those on our YouTube page. Also, there's going to be an upcoming webinar in September about the big visa bulletin that will come out for October. For Canadians, if you're a Canadian citizen, you are eligible to use a TN visa. For more, ask your recruiter. And TN visas are not affected by retrogression, but all green card applications today for every country are affected by retrogression right now in this moment. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I can't recommend, signing up for that retrogression webinar here in September enough. And I highly recommend going back and watching the one that we have on our YouTube page if you haven't already. I know even our team got a lot of great information out of it, so I highly recommend it for you guys.
I think that's almost all of the questions. There are a couple of questions that came in about nurse aid cases, and I think if there's so we don't currently have open nurse aid positions. So we don't have nurse aid positions in any of these states right now. But if you have questions about your specific nurse aid application, please contact your case manager. They are going to be the ones that can help you with those specific questions. So any final thoughts from our relocation team as we close down this webinar?
My final thought is just to think about those places that maybe you haven't thought about before when you're going and talking to your recruiter about some of the options that you have across the United States. There's a lot of really amazing places that you would never even consider, where you'll find a lot of great activities, a lot of great culture, and just a great time overall.
Absolutely. Just kind of adding on to what Molly said. I know maybe you might have in your mind some specific states that you are really wanting, but we just really encourage you to take a look into maybe some other options. Like Molly said, some options maybe you haven't thought of before, because there are so many wonderful states here in the U.S. that have so much to offer, and we just really recommend that you take a look and give them a chance.
Awesome. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you so much to our relocation team for putting this together. And I hope everybody has a really good night or evening or morning, wherever you are in the world.